Just to tell you one other little story, like when the news got involved, a lot of students mobilized, and we kind of moved in with the families, and it started this whole thing of hundreds of people were facing arrest for squatting out this cathedral, and so the church, the news was making it look like the church was kicking homeless people out. That's because the church was kicking homeless people out, but it didn't look good to the outside, and so they eventually ended up saying, okay, here, we're going to have the fire marshal come in and say, we fire standards, it's in the interest of the family's safety, and we'll evict them. And incidentally, we weren't sure what to do about that. But the night before that we were expecting the fire marshal, there was a knock at the door. And it was almost midnight, so we go to the door, and we're stunned to see these firefighters outside. And we're like, oh my gosh, we start talking, we're like, we thought you were coming tomorrow, it's midnight, the kids are already asleep, could you please come back? And they're like, no, listen, we're not here to kick you out. In fact, it's just the opposite. We know what's happening, and we know it's not right. And we're here against orders. In fact, we can get in really big trouble if they knew we were here, but we want to help you get ready for tomorrow, because they are coming. And they help us get the fire extinguishers, the exit signs, and we put up smoke detectors every 30 feet, we work on that. The next day, the fire marshal came, and the media was there, and the police officers, and the archdiocese officials, and they walked through the building, and the fire marshal said, I'm not kicking them out, they need fire standards. And it felt like God could split open oceans and swallow up armies, or whatever it took to protect these families, And it was in the middle of that I feel like we really began to understand what it means to be the body of Christ, and to have this sense that we are born again, because I grew up with altar calls and all that stuff down in the Bible Belt in the South, where every year it's about let's go get born again. Don't get me wrong, it was awesome every time. If you haven't done it, I highly recommend it. But I think that being born again was just sort of this esoteric idea until that cathedral brought it to life, because now to be born again, man, this is my sister, this is my brother, and we are a part of a tragically dysfunctional family of rebirth. You know what I mean? And it's got to mess with us when people are living on the streets while others of us have more than we need. And it's that vision that we began to read in the early church. As we opened up our Bible, we saw that in the book of Acts it says all of the believers in the early church, they held everything in common. No one claimed any of their possessions were their own, but they shared everything they had. And it says, and there were no needy persons among them. One of the signs of the birthday of the early church at Pentecost was they ended poverty, because they figured out the responsibilities of this radical rebirth that we have. And we're meant to bear each other's burdens. And so as we started discovering that, we thought we had just come upon a treasure. We're like, oh my gosh, this is what the church was meant to be, And we kind of thought we were inventing it for the first time in hundreds of years, And then we started to look around a little bit, We saw that it seems, in fact, that every few hundred years there is a renewal in the church. That every few hundred years we have an identity crisis in the church, where we get infected by our culture, by the materialism and the militarism and all of this stuff of this world gets in us, and we forget who we are. And so people began to go back to the deserts and to the margins, and these are those beautiful movements of renewal within the church. And folks like St. Francis and Clare and Assisi, that in the middle of the materialism and the Crusades in Italy, they heard God say, repair my church which is in ruins. And they began to answer that call. Of course, Francis was a simpleton. He really just took the bricks and started building that whole St. Anthony on the cross, for the poor, for the lepers, and built and reimagined what it meant to be church. But then we saw that. This is something that's happened over and over. John Wesley, right? John Wesley is the world. One of the things growing up when I was Methodist is I was like, man, I started to read John Wesley, and I'm like, the problem is Methodists don't know who John Wesley is. John Wesley said, if I should die with more than 10 pounds, if if I should die with more than 10 pounds, may every person call me a liar and a thief, because I betrayed the gospel and the poor. And he committed to cap his income at the poor person's wage of 28 pounds a year and give away everything else. This radical vision that he felt, that's why he had the fire on the cross in the Methodist. Half the Methodist church is the only place you see fires on the little cross up front, But like this is a movement that it happens over and over that we need these renewals. And there came a moment for us where we said, we're going to stop complaining about the church that we've experienced and work on becoming the church that we dream of. And so we started looking around for places that we could learn that. And now, we started a little community in North Philadelphia, and now there's just communities starting everywhere, and you guys are doing it here in Ann Arbor. There's folks doing it all over the world, and we just claim to be one little speck of this beautiful thing. I've been to probably a dozen different countries this year, and God is moving all over the world, and I think it's absolutely a fun and beautiful time to be alive. But it's important not to take ourselves too seriously, and I think that what's exciting is all that we're really doing is figuring out how to cultivate a new culture in the church that is a witness to the rest of the world. And, that's what I love about the Amish, is they understand what it means to be peculiar in the patterns of the world, you can almost, we got a lot of Amish folks around. In fact, I was just in Goshen, Indiana, and come on, Goshen, and I have folks try to offset the environmental impact of my travel. So some of y'all might be doing that here, fasting from fuel and things like that in order to help me offset the environmental impact when I travel somewhere. So when I went to Goshen, the Amish picked me up in a horse-drawn buggy and drove me 25 miles to where I was going to speak. I love it. And you have this sense that, here we are, we're just driving down, we're driving past Burger King, feeling like I'm in a different world, I'm in horse-drawn buggy. Is that Burger King really there? And then it makes you question what is real. And you can almost hear the Amish kids growing up, Mom, why do we dress like this? And their parents sort of telling them, well, we're different. We have a different story from the world around us. And so we dress very plain because our beauty doesn't come from what we wear, but from who we are. And you can hear the kids well, Dad, why don't we drive cars? Horses are so 1800s. Well, because we're a little different. There's all kinds of problems that come with the cars and with so many of the things that you see in the world out there. And I think we can all, debate how much we should be taxed and, things like that. But the thing is, they understand what it means to be a contrast culture in the world. And I think in all of our quest to be culturally relevant, we're in danger of being culturally peculiar and being non-conformist to the patterns that are wrong in the world. Then you think of how the Amish responded to the school shooting. Do you remember that? And maybe it's no surprise because they've entirely raised up a people that have a different story and a different culture from the patterns around them. So two or 3 years ago when a deranged madman came into their school and shot a bunch of their kids and then turned the gun on himself, the response of the Amish was unbelievable and totally irrational from the things that we would think. And they immediately went to the murderer's family and they said, is there anything that we can do for you? This is the one who shot their kids, And folks began to pour out money to the Amish families, and they created scholarships for the children of the one who killed their kids. And then the funerals came around, and they went to the funeral of their own kids, and they also went to the community to the funeral of the one who killed their kids. And they hung out with his family, and they mourned the loss of his life. And in all of it, it just fascinated the world with grace. I was all the way on the other side of the world in Australia. And what made headline news in Australia was not the horror of the incident. What made headline news was Amazing Grace. And it was the story of how the Amish